Hello, folks. Welcome back to... Oh, shoot, I forgot.
You didn't let me say, here we come, Cub.
Hello, folks.
And here we come, Cub.
And here we come, Cub. Welcome to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. Rusty and Heather Bryant with you. And, man, we're going to have... This is summer shorts. We're going to do our best to keep the question short because we've done so good at that.
We're crushing the short life on our podcast.
But we are coming to the end closely. We're coming close to the end of our summer shorts series. But we got some announcements. We got to make some announcements. All right.
Don't fast forward. You need to hear these announcements.
Yes, listen to the announcements. Let's knock this one out first.
Okay.
So the first thing is, if you've been trying to keep up with our reading, which we will admit we got a little behind on some stuff, and we haven't done reviews in a couple of months, so we're going to have to catch up on that here in the next few weeks. Life has been busy, which is busy for everybody, so I know that everybody understands. But the one thing that I'm really, really proud of, we have not missed an episode of this podcast. So thank you for our faithful listeners that you continue listening every week, and we keep promising to be here for you every week, and we have. So what we have failed on is to do a video recap of the books we've been reading, but we're sort of up to date on our readings, and so we just finished the How to Stay Married book. And so that was for July. And so today we'll announce, and we'll put it on social media this week, but for today we'll announce that our August reading, what's the name of it?
It is Praying these scriptures for your marriage. Trusting God with your most important relationship. It's by Joni Burnt.
Jody
Burnt, B-E-R-N-D-T. Yeah, you're right, Jody, J-O-D-I-E.
So that's going to kind of play into our question for the day that we'll get to in just a minute. But we'll post a picture of that. Actually, we looked it up just a minute ago, and on Amazon, it's really cheap right now. You can get a copy of the paperback for like less than $10 on Amazon. So
even the hardback was like $10.50 or something like that.
Yeah. So go ahead and order one for your for you and your spouse, and start reading and praying for your spouse.
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing that is the big announcement. Now, this one's big. You need to pull out your calendar for this one. You need to mark your calendar. All right, so it's August the 18th.
Yes.
Which is 2 Sunday. If you're listening to this in real time, it's 2 Sundays away. This is going to be a big night. So we have it's been maybe a couple of years ago that we tried something called Just a Cup of Coffee. And it was basically a Zoom call that anybody could get on. And if you signed up for it, we would send you a link. And so, we were just kind of getting our ministry kind of started up, and we had a great response for that, and we had a great time just hanging out. We did a little short teaching, a little marriage teaching, and then just cool to see people from all over the country that had tuned in. So we want to start doing that more so that we can just offer an opportunity for marriages to all come and be a part of the Redeemed Marriage community. And so we thought to kind of kick that off and do one of those again, that we would make this something that had lots of different reasons for doing it. One is, again, just a time to come and hang out. So on August the 18th, a Sunday evening at 8 o'clock Central Time. So wherever you are in the world, you'll have to adjust your clock to the correct time. But 8 o'clock.
To the correct time.
Well,
like Central Time is the correct time.
That's right. Central Time, the correct time. So wherever you are, just be prepared for that. But be looking this week and next week. We're going to be promoting this on social media because we'll have a way that you can actually kind of sign up for it so that you can get the Zoom link, because that's the important part, is getting the Zoom link. And here's what we're going to do that night. We're going to hang out for a few minutes, probably 30 minutes or so. We're going to chat, give a little some sort of marriage tip, advice, some sort of small teaching. But the cool thing is this. That's the night that we're going to be drawing the grand prize that we've been waiting for all summer long.
Right. That's right.
All right, so our summer shorts contest has been you submit a question, and all of the people that submitted questions, so well over 100 of these
Yep.
by this point, we will put them in a drawing, and whoever wins, we're going to come and visit you, and we're going to go on a double date with you.
Yep.
And we're super excited about that. So we're going to draw live that night.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be present to win, but we want you to be there. We want you to be there.
I tried to make that the rule, and he was like, no, we can't do that to people.
That would have been really fun. So, but we want you to be there. You can see where we're going to be going. It'll be a lot of fun. Another thing, and we haven't really talked about this, but I think we've got enough time to do this. That night, I think it'd be really cool if we announce the dates for our retreat.
Yeah.
For 2020,
Sure.
retreats for 2025.
That would be fun if we can nail them down in the next couple of weeks.
That's right, because we'll have we've got 3 retreats in 2025, and it'd be fun to announce those to the group at that time. So at least announce the dates, not necessarily sign up and stuff like that.
Yep.
Might not be ready for that. Okay, so there it is.
So exciting.
So all that to say, this week, next week, summer shorts done.
Yeah.
So
now I will say that we got some wonderful questions, like really great questions that I think, oh, we could make a whole topic out of that, answer that. So if you hear your topic, even in the months and years to come, and we don't give you credit for it,
yeah.
you don't win a prize for it, we won't read your exact question. But a lot of those questions had some good just nuggets of things that I think are real important to answer because people wonder about them, obviously, or they wouldn't have asked. And so just because our summer short series is ending doesn't mean that you might not hear your topic down the line.
Yep. And we've tossed around, look, we do value your questions. And like we've been really wanting to just answer them, like just send you an email and answer your question, even if we don't do it, on our podcast. So we've been trying to think of some ways too that we can just make sure that we answer all the questions at some point. And so maybe that'll come in the form of a topic that, like Heather just said, or it might be that we're thinking through how we can incorporate it into some video where we just do Q&A and put it on our YouTube channel. So you got to go subscribe to our YouTube channel because those are some things that we're working on for the future. All right. Can we do this question?
Yeah, let's do this question.
All right.
So today's question comes from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma. Here it is. Hey, Heather and Rusty, what does your Bible study time look like together? How do you grow closer to the Lord and closer together?
All right. It's a great question.
There were several questions that kind of were the same theme of how do you grow spiritually together? And so I think it's an important question and maybe might surprise some people for sure.
Yeah, so we get asked this question a lot, not just through question submissions like this, but a lot of times when we're doing marriage coaching and things like that, this comes up. And so, we have a lot of opinions. We also are not perfect in this area, so we want people to know that. I think that this is one of those things that's just a lifelong journey that you're trying to figure out with, you and your spouse. Because your spiritual life is a lifelong journey, just individually. So if it's that way individually, then it's obviously that way as a couple too. So you want to start with some of your thoughts and opinions?
Yeah, so I definitely think that this answer is not just, well, a couple of things. It's not going to be the same thing for everybody. Like there's no way that we can sit here and say, if you'll do this, this, and this, then spiritually y'all will be connected. That it's just not possible because everybody connects to the Lord in a different way. Everybody's challenged by the Lord in different ways. And so we can't blanket an answer for this. And then 2, ours doesn't look the same all the time.
Right.
what we do together looks different through different seasons. I do remember that when we first started, we were in desperate times 13 years ago now, where we were like, we have to do something together. And someone, one of our mentors, gave us the book Love and War Devotionals for Couples. There's a Love and War book, but then there's also a Love and War devotional for couples. And it is by John and Stacy Eldridge. And this was powerful for us. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to go through a marriage crisis for you to do this. If you need something just to jumpstart your
Connectivity?
connectiveness.
Connectedness?
Connectedness.
You almost are saying naked. Connectedness? Words are really hard for Heather.
Here they are. Whatever you need. I think this is a great place to start. So if you're like, we just need something to do together. It's not heavy. It's not, it's kind of just a short thing that you read together each day, and then there's some discussion.
Yeah, I actually have the book in front of me. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can. We showed you the cover of it, but it's actually, the way it works is it's 8 weeks. And there's 5 devotions for each week. So it gives you a little grace period. So they're not doing all 7. But they are literally like 2 to 3 pages of a small book. And they are so practical. Like the all of the topics are just really practical and really good for, just about any couple.
Yeah.
So
no matter the stage.
Right. And
I
really like that, that Heather brought this up from the very beginning, because what we're going to talk about as far as what we do, some of you just might not be at that stage in your marriage.
That's right.
And so you just are like, hey, I just need some advice. I'm just desperate for something. So what would be your advice? And our very simple advice would be, get this book, give it a try for 8 weeks. It'll help you to connect together. It'll spark some conversation. And then make sure that you pray together at the end of each time at the beginning
discussion.
or end or whatever. And, maybe take turns, each one of you praying, because this is the way. What we're trying to do is to give you some very practical tips to just jumpstart your spiritual growth together.
Yep. And I think that is a great way just to be intentional about it. If you're kind of feeling awkward about saying something to your spouse about it, where if you're like, I really want to do something together, but how do you say that? Because I think for a lot of women that's hard, because you don't want to overstep in, I'm trying to lead this family, and so it's just kind of an easy way to say, hey, Rusty and Heather, whatever, whoever, said something about this devotional book. I thought we could try it. It's just 8 weeks. So it's not like you're committing to something for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of what makes you successful, is if you commit, if you're like, we're going to do this, we're going to do a devotion together 5 days a week for the rest of our life. It seems super overwhelming. And then if you miss days or whatever, and then you quit, and then you feel like a failure.
Yep.
So don't set yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
Say, let's do this 8-week adventure together. And even if you're like, hey, we only have 2 nights at home together, where we could do this, work schedules, whatever, nightly nurses, there's lots of things that can come into play where this would be difficult. Then do it for 2 nights a week and let it just go until, I'm not going to do that math on here, how many ever weeks that takes.
Yeah.
So if I'm right, it's 32 weeks, but I'm probably not.
Yeah, I'm just blah, 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 blah. I don't even want to go there. I'm not thinking that, because I was actually thinking about, if for some reason, if you've read this book before, you want to try something different. The other one is Levi and Jenny Lusko.
Yeah.
They have a fairly new one I think it's called Marriage Devotional. Very simple. Very creative title. But it's very similar to this. It's practical, gives you just like 1 or 2 pages. That's really simple. I would suggest if you are really trying to jumpstart this together as a couple, I would say to do it together. Because what we're probably about to talk about a little bit is just your individual growth and how that for us has sort of morphed into how we grow together is really how we're growing separately. But if you just need a way to connect, this is it.
Yep.
Okay, so just to give you guys a little glimpse into our lives and what we really do to grow spiritually and to also grow spiritually together. It's probably, I mean, maybe it's not what people think. I don't know. But we sort of grew up in this culture of checking the box for a lot of stuff and, somewhat legalistic as far as you said it at the very beginning, there's not really a checklist to say, hey, do these things. It's sort of like whenever I see see those books, the 10 ways to affair-proof your marriage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you could check all of those boxes and something could still happen. So it's really hard to be able to say, do these things and you're going to grow. So we sort of learned that, and it took a lot of pressure off of our spiritual growth together and individually. And so we also learned I think the biggest thing we learned is another thing. You were giving these blanket statements at the beginning that was just kind of encompassing everything that we want to say, because one of the things that you said was we're different and we connect differently. And I think that in our early years of marriage, you were, first of all, you nagged a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Which we've talked about this. So don't nag your spouse, because nagging your spouse into growing spiritually has never worked for anybody. So don't nag. You can be an encouragement. You can offer suggestions, but you can do it in a way that's not nagging. And so if, that's one big part of it is don't try to force your spouse into doing something, especially don't try to force your spouse into doing something to connect with God that's not really their way of connecting with God. Now, all of that to also say there are things that we do to lead our families that maybe that's not the big connection. For instance, maybe some of you heard that and you thought, oh, well, I don't really connect with God by going to church, so I don't need to go to church. And I would say, no, you do those things because your family needs that. And, I mean, you're going to church not just to worship with your family, but for you to connect. Everybody needs that. Everybody needs community. Now, that might not be your number one connection. For me, we've learned there's like 9 different ways that you can connect with God. And so many of them overlap and bleed into each other. And most of us have 2 or 3 different ways. And like for me, mine is nature. So if I go for a run, it's a spiritual time for me. I pray a lot. For you, it's different.
Yep. For me, it's worship. Just, anytime I can put on worship music, or being in corporate worship, that's where I feel closest to the Lord, just in praise. For me, that's definitely what it is. I also like the relational part of that, journeying with people, encouraging, having a mentor, having a best friend that we talk about what we're learning. That's just important to me.
Mm-hmm. So the biggest point there is that it would be really silly for me to expect Heather to connect with God in the same way that I do. Because if I said, hey, I like to go for a run every day and I spend time praying, and that's also how I worship. So you need to do that too, because if you don't, you're not connecting with God.
Right.
Well, if she had to go out and run and try to connect with God,
I would be cussing.
Yes.
Not connecting with
Not
God.
connecting. Cussing, not connecting. Write that in Facebook
That's
this week. So, and in the same way, she used to try, she would do these
Yeah.
Bible
Well,
study.
and that's what I was going to say. Let me tell this
Yeah.
part because I thought that my way was intellectual because that's what my mentor is. Like Penny, oh my word, she loves to get out all the different, things, the pencils, the colored pencils, you know, all the details of diving into what this Greek word means and what, and I was like, oh, well, that's how I have to do it because that's how she did it because I was learning. I mean, it's like a child watching their parent. And that's how you learn. And so I would do that because I thought that's how I needed to connect with the Lord. And then I tried to make you feel like that's how you should have connected with the Lord because that's all that I saw and all that I knew. And so not only was I not doing a good job of it, but then I was trying to force you into doing a good job of it. And secretly, I think I was just hoping that you would be better at it than me and could lead me in that way.
Yeah.
And it's not how either one of us connects.
No, I mean, that kind of stuff, it's hard for me and
Yeah.
it drives me crazy. And so much of that, too, is background. And, I have a seminary background where I had to really dive in, all of the deep theological studying and stuff. And, that just, it's just not who I am
Right.
in this season of my life. And so, but again, that kind of stuff can change.
Yes.
It may be that when I have more time, that maybe I decide that, I want to, or maybe I feel led and feel pulled to do that at that point. But, we're just trying to tell you guys, don't feel bad about being different in the ways that you connect with God. And so I would just say that you give each other the space to grow individually. Because to be honest, it's that whole the triangle, with God at the
Right.
top and us, at the bottom of the triangle, and we're each growing closer to God. And as we grow closer to God, you grow closer together.
Right.
And some of that can be some intentional, let's do this together. But the majority of that is you're growing closer to God individually, and it makes you grow
Closer together.
closer together.
That's right. That's right.
And I would say that, and again, this question for most people when they ask us this, it's because they're not in a real mature, growing relationship with God. Now we have everything. It's just like everybody else. Ours is a roller coaster. There's times that things are really, really good. We feel really, really close to God. We've had lots of time to invest in our spiritual life, and then other times there's just some dry seasons. And so we recognize that, and we know that that's part of it. But we, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted.
Sorry, I'm writing down things that I'm supposed to be saying.
Okay. Well, I got really distracted.
sorry.
So if you could pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I was going to say is that I feel like that there was a moment for me where I really just had to ask God, how, like, you created me. Like, he created me, and he knows the way that I connect with him best because that's how he made me. That's how he knit me together. And so I can remember when I was getting frustrated with all the different ways and feeling like I was doing that checkbox. I was like, God, you created me. How do you want me to connect with you? And I can remember really listening and asking and hearing how I connect best with him. And it's thinking through times of, gosh, I really felt close to God in that moment, or I really feel close to God in this. And that was really, really important for me. And so if you are, out there thinking, I don't know how to connect with God. What do you mean? Like, what is it that, what is it in me that God wants? How does God want to draw me to himself? That's what you have to figure out. And there's so many times that I catch myself saying, I just don't want to check a box. I just don't want to check a box. But that's not an excuse for not doing something. Like, you can't say, I'm not going to, I don't want this to be what's the word that
Legalistic.
And so I'm just not going to read my Bible every
Right.
day. Well, I'm sorry. There has to be some things that you do out of obedience.
Yeah, it's discipline.
It's discipline.
Right.
It's obedience. It is, God, you call me to draw near to you. And so I'm doing this in obedience. And then your feelings kind of catch up with that. And so I think that's really important as far as like, don't check the box, but you still need to be doing something. I think the other thing is that I wanted to say was we get a lot of questions about, well, my spouse isn't. How can I encourage my spouse to? And that's where it gets tricky because you want to encourage them, but you're not in charge of them. And so, you can ask questions like, hey, what'd you learn today in your Bible? Or what have you been learning recently? What's God been teaching you recently?
Or just what God's been teaching you. I mean, that's so much less confrontational, maybe is the word, because if they're not because the defensive part of you could go, oh, you're trying to call me out because you haven't been seeing me read my Bible.
Right.
And I mean, that's just the natural thought, but God can teach us something all the time. So to start that conversation, sometimes that's what it is. Just like, hey, what have you, what's God been saying to you lately?
Right.
What have you been hearing from God lately?
Yep. Instead of being the parent to your spouse, like that's not your job.
Yep.
And then the other thing that I was thinking about, so I think just admitting where I think we have not done a great job lately is kind of that level of accountability of saying, what's God teaching you lately? Where we're sharing instead of, because honestly, I'm kind of going through a little dry season to where when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, gosh, I could read Psalms. I could continue in my Bible in a year or 2 years, the plan that I'm doing, or oh, there's this great book that I love to read, the Don't Let the Enemy Have a Seat at Your Table. I mean, there's so many options. And I sit there and go, gosh, I don't know what to do today, or I did this and I didn't get much out of it. Maybe I should have done that. And so it's just an accountability of being able to be able to say to you, I'm kind of struggling right now. I'm kind of struggling with the intimacy. Now, I can put on a worship song on the way to school and have tears flowing down both sides just out of thankfulness. And so it's not like I'm not connecting with him, but as far as me growing in spiritual maturity, I feel like in that sense, I'm kind of in a dry season where I don't feel like I'm learning as much as I should be. And so instead of beating myself up about that, and instead of, saying I'm the worst, it needs to be, hey, I need you to kind of hold me accountable, and maybe we could talk through what I'm learning. Last Sunday, you and both boys were in Oregon, and I didn't get to go because I'm teaching already. And I was by myself in church, and a couple friend of ours saw me by myself, and they, ran over and they were like, well, you're not sitting by yourself. And that was super sweet of them to do. But during the prayer time at the end, my friend leaned over and she was like, can you just pray for me? Because I'm having trouble right now in my personal relationship, in growing with him, because they've got 2 young kids. She's working 3 jobs. It's trying to find the time to spend with him. That doesn't mean that she's a bad person, or that she just was desiring that relationship with the Lord and wanted a friend to pray with her about that. And I think that that's a super sweet way to just say, hey, I know, like, I'm acknowledging, for me, things are not how they're supposed to be right now. And I want to come alongside you, whether that's with your spouse. I think that's super. And I'm sure she told her spouse the same thing. But it's, just asking your spouse, hey, I just kind of need your help in this right now.
Well, and I think that's a good way to jumpstart even the whole prayer thing together, for you to ask your spouse, hey, can you pray for me? Because it's not, we don't pray together enough, or we need to pray together more. It's, hey, can you pray for me? Because this is something that's, that's going on with me, or I don't feel like I'm where I need to, that kind of thing. And where I was going a while ago, what I wanted to share is that when you get to this place, nobody should ever be satisfied. Nobody
Yeah.
should ever be complacent or comfortable or anything. You should always be striving. And like you said, seasons are different. There's different times that you do things in different ways. But the bottom line is, like, for us, there's a maturity at this point to where our life is just sort of lived open-handedly. Like, our life is just, everything, like our relationship, our spiritual life is just incorporated into everything that we do. It's not like we're walking around with our Bible in our hand and a halo above our head, and we're just constant. But all of our conversations, all of our, I mean, like even church is not a question. Like, we're going to
Right.
corporate worship if we're here. Like, and if we're not, we're watching it,
Right.
if we're traveling. Like, those are things that are just sort of non-negotiables. And then along with that is just, as we're discussing things with our kids and as we're talking to them, it's all centered around, like, conversations are centered around, what does God want you to do? What would God have you say here? Why are you in this position in this season in your life? What are you looking for opportunities? It's always just about, how can we make God the center of our marriage and the center, and sometimes that just means living life day to day with Him at the center of everything that you're doing. That's what it should be all the time.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, we didn't do our devotion and we didn't pray together today, so God's not at the center of our marriage.
Right. Right.
That's not a true statement.
Yeah. That's a checklist.
That's right.
That's a checklist.
And while those checklists are great for accountability and to keep us on the right track, and during dry seasons you find ways to reconnect, great. But the ultimate goal is just to put God at the center of your marriage and at the center of your family.
Yep.
And that might look a little different for everybody, but it also looks the same in that everything revolves around Christ.
Right. Right. I love it. And I think that same thing with prayer. I am not a huge, of course, you make fun of me on every coaching call because I can end in prayer and talk. So I can do that. But I also talk to God throughout the day in little spurts. It's not, dear Heavenly Father, every time. It's just like, and a lot of them are, the biggest areas for me are praise, like, thank you for that. Or, just everything that I see are things that I'm walking through my day. I try to praise along the way. And then also, of course, please be with, one of my boys will pop into my head, or you'll pop into my head, or our marriage ministry. And I just say a quick prayer for that. And that's just a continuous thing. And so I just think that so many times this gets lumped into just a little bit of time that I have to spend with the Lord for 30 minutes in the morning, or that we do our devotion together 30 minutes at night, instead of it just being, this is how we do life.
Yeah, this is life. And I think that I hope that what people are hearing from us is, hey, that's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because I think that you can listen to some people and they give you the checklist and they tell you all the things, and you feel so guilty, and you think, that's not realistic. Like, that's not attainable with the schedule that I have and my kids and all that. But I hope that you listen to this and you're like, wow, that's not something that's overwhelming. It's just being a disciple of Christ is just following Jesus. And that's just a devotion of everything in your heart. And when you do that, it just becomes a way of life. It doesn't become another thing that you have to put on your calendar.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yep.
All right. Hey, hope you've marked down August the 18th. And we've got one more week.
Yeah.
So get your questions in this week to make sure that's the way that you're going to be in for the grand prize drawing. But also one more week for us to try to select your question to read next week and answer. But we really want you to be a part of the grand prize drawing. So get your questions in this week. And we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Peace.